Hi everyone, welcome to topic number 4, nutrition for bone health. Hopefully you're all enjoying these videos so far. So please don't forget to pass on any questions that you might have to your coaches, and then they can pass them on to me so I can answer them in the Q&A session, which I know I've mentioned that a heap already, but it's coming up in March. As a volleyball athlete, or any athlete for that matter, I am sure that you're aware that your bone health is really important. Our nutrition plays a big role in this. Not only will it be important to make sure that our overall energy intake in the day is adequate, as well as our eating around training and games, but calcium intake is going to play a really big role in this as well. Now, calcium is a mineral that is essential for building and maintaining strong and healthy teeth and bones. In order to help this process along, we need to make sure that we are maintaining an optimal calcium intake through our diets. If we don't supply our bones with enough calcium, calcium losses from our bones will be accelerated, and this would be an athlete's worst nightmare. In time, this could lead to a condition called osteoporosis. And for those who don't know what that is, it's essentially spongy bones, so where your bones turn to sponge. This can obviously lead to breakages, but also it can lead to injuries such as stress fractures or other bony type injuries, which again, as an athlete, I'm sure that you would probably like to avoid at all costs. So how can we avoid this? Well, it really comes down to including enough calcium in your diet each day. Now, your needs will likely vary a little bit depending on your age and your gender, but for most athletes, it is going to be around about the 1,200 to 1,300 milligrams of calcium each day, which is roughly going to be about 4 to 5 serves of calcium-rich foods. That's every day. Dairy products, so milk, yogurt, and cheese, really are the best source of calcium for our bodies. And it's also the best absorbed form too. So a simple tip here would be to include a source of dairy, ideally at each meal or snack, and post-training as well. For those who choose not to have dairy or maybe can't have dairy, we would suggest including dairy alternatives. So things like soy milk, nut milks, rice milk, etc. There's plenty of options out there these days. But you will need to make sure that these are fortified with calcium because they're not always. A lot of these alternatives, or some of the alternatives that you might actually be using, may be labeled as organic. Now, if it is labeled as organic, there is a very good chance that it won't have any added nutrients at all, because when we add things to something, it doesn't make it organic anymore. That's not a bad thing. It's just something to look out for. Some of the specific brands that I know are fortified with calcium are So Good and Vitasoy. So any of their varieties are going to be fine for you to use. And they do actually match the calcium content of dairy milk. So if you do fall into this category, what I would suggest is that you check the label of whatever milk you've got at home at the moment that you might be using. And yeah, just have a look at the label and check that, one, there is calcium in there, but two, we're probably looking for, a good chunk of calcium as well. So we need there to be at least 300 milligrams of calcium in there per serve. If there's not that sort of amount of calcium or near enough to that in the milk that you're using, I might suggest a swap to, say, a So Good brand or a Vitasoy, or any other brand that you can find that is fortified with that much calcium, because it's really important that we get it in there. Also, there are 2 newish specific products that I find myself recommending to all the athletes that I work with to help them increase their calcium intake in a really easy way. That is the Rokeby Farms protein smoothie, which you might remember that one from the post-training options a couple of videos ago, and the John West calcium-rich tuna. So both of these products actually have around 2 to 3 serves of calcium each. So that's a pretty good chunk of our calcium needs kind of hit straight away. As I said earlier, I do generally suggest for athletes to try and consume calcium-rich foods with every meal and snack in the day. And it's also a really easy one to include post-training because, typically speaking, well, most of these will also be a source of protein too. Keeping in mind, if you are using those milk alternatives, some of those don't contain protein, so keep that in mind. But some other examples of things that you could include are things like cheese and crackers, yogurt with or without fruit or muesli, milk or fortified alternative, with your cereal or as a drink, tinned salmon with the bones. Now, I don't love tinned salmon or tinned fish of any kind with bones, but it is a great source of calcium. And so what I actually do with my tinned salmon is I use it to make salmon patties. I just find that this is a much more enjoyable way to eat it. You still get the calcium, you still get the protein, and it just tastes a heap better. So if you're a little bit nervous about trying tinned salmon with bones, maybe make it into patties as a first step. You could also do up and go or any other milk drink. You could add some cheese into your salad or a sandwich or a wrap. You could do a drink of milk or an alternative with your breakfast or your lunches. And you could add yogurt maybe as a part of your post-training snack. Now, if you've been listening to this and feel worried that you might not be getting enough calcium, you could use the calcium counter that I've included for you on the information sheet. So you could do a quick little count of your usual day's intake. So what I would suggest is maybe just doing a quick little write out of the foods that you might eat in the day. Check that against the calcium counter and do a quick little add up of how much calcium roughly you might be having, keeping in mind that we're aiming for around about the 1200 to 1300 mark. For those who choose not to or are unable to have dairy, this might be you. Like, it might be a little bit harder for you to get the calcium that you need. It doesn't make it impossible, but it just makes it a little bit harder. So what you will notice on that calcium counter, though, is that there are plenty of other foods that are not dairy that do still contain calcium. Do check them carefully, though, because a lot of them or some of them do have calcium, but that content is typically much less when we compare that to the dairy products. For example, things like almonds and broccoli. So a large handful of almonds only gives you about half a serve of calcium. And you would actually need to eat about 1 kilo of broccoli before we would even get to 1 full serve of calcium, which I really would prefer not to do. So you can have broccoli and that's fine, but it just probably doesn't give you, quite a decent chunk of calcium. It's there, but not in huge amounts. So just to do a quick little summary for you of the video today, calcium is really important for your bone health as an athlete. It is going to help keep your bones strong, but can also help to prevent from injuries during training or games. If you're feeling like you might not be having enough calcium, maybe make a list of some of the foods that you like or are happy to try from that calcium counter list that I've included on your information sheet, and maybe just have a look and see where you could fit them into your day. And I have included a few of those tips there as well for you on that information sheet. So maybe just start there. I really hope that you all enjoyed this video on nutrition and bone health. As always, please don't forget to pass on any questions that you might have to your coaches so that I can answer these at the upcoming question and answer session towards the end of March, okay? We will have the next 2 videos ready for you in the coming 2 weeks. So I will see you all again then.